Hello. Hello relatives, my Lakota name is x264, which means walks with young people. And that was given to me by my elders a couple years ago. And I welcome you all with an open heart and an open hand. I guess you could say my government name is Frank Juan. I'm from the Rosebud Reservation in South Central South Dakota, born and raised. Right now I currently reside in Chicago. I lived there for 4 years. I went to school there. I graduated a year ago with a Bachelor of Arts in Audio Arts and Acoustics. And I'm a music producer, performer. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about, you're going to hear a little bit about my story and my life and where I come from, and a little bit about my community through my performance. And I'm going to start out with a song I wrote about home called To Live and Die on the Plains. Now, what I'm going to do with this music and with my performance is just tell my story. And I'm going to tell you guys a little story about some of the things that pushed me to do that. So I was born and raised on a reservation in South Dakota, and I left and moved away to go to college. And at first I went to Omaha, Creighton University in Nebraska, studied pre-med for 2 years, decided to follow my passion of music, and that landed me in Chicago. And the first week I was there, something happened that changed my life forever. So my reservation is very rural. It's about the size of Rhode Island, the Rosebud Reservation. We got one stoplight on our whole res. It's very rural. So I went from that to living amongst skyscrapers in a huge metropolis like Chicago. And so it was a big culture shock for me, and for a lot of reasons. You know, it was the first time I realized that I grew up poor. It was the first time I realized that my home and my culture was very unique. And the first week I was there, I was living in a dorm in downtown Chicago. And I got on the elevator of the dorm, and this girl got on with me, this non-native girl. And she said, "You have very pretty hair, what are you?" I said, "Thank you, I'm Lakota. I'm Native American." And she looked at me confused and she said, "You guys are still alive?" She thought we were extinct. She thought Native Americans didn't exist. And at the same time, I was taking a class called Culture, Race, and Media, where we analyze the way people who are marginalized and oppressed are portrayed in mainstream media. And I learned a term called symbolic annihilation, which means that if a people who don't have a voice and who are a small population and who are marginalized, like Native people, aren't given a voice in mainstream media and they're only portrayed as a static, dead culture of the past, to a lot of society, we're not going to exist. Because a lot of people aren't going to come into our communities and spend time. Or you may walk by a Native on the street and they're not going to look like what you see on TV, the Indians that non-natives portray. So you're not even going to know you walk by a Native. So a lot of people think we're invisible or we don't exist. And so I started thinking about that and started paying attention to who's telling our stories. Who's telling the story of my home and me? It's people who weren't from our communities. It's people who don't look like me. It's people who don't see my home the same way I do. So I decided to start telling my story through my music. And I've been very fortunate and very blessed, and it took me places. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of my story here today. This song is called To Live and Die on the Plains, and this is a song about when I was younger and I was in a dark place. I was depressed and I was suicidal. I was dealing with a lot of the historical trauma and traumas that we go through as Native people that are a result of the things our ancestors went through. You know, let us not forget genocide happened in this land. Our ancestors survived genocide. This is a lonely land. You're on settled, occupied land right now. And you know, we need to honor that. So this song is connecting all that history to my lived reality, because it's affected by that history, whether I want it to be or not.